So welcome to the Courageous Nerd YouTube channel. My name's Connor. I'm joined today by writer David Goodman. David, how are you doing today?
Fine, Connor. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. And obviously, you've worked on quite a few, I'd say, beloved projects in different like fan bases throughout your career so far. And obviously, I'll try and touch on each of them as we go along here. But I suppose to kind of work in order that you did them, the Golden Girls was the first, I think, right? And I suppose like going back to that time in your life and in your career, what kind of led you to pursue writing or television writing as a career choice?
Yeah, well, back then in the 1980s, when I was in college, I didn't know anybody who worked as a writer in television. My mother was a social worker, my father was a professor of psychology, and I was from New York, and there was no internet. So nowadays you can actually even connect with people who are doing what you're doing. Back then it was reading books, and I was a big film fan and a big television fan, and I always thought in the back of my mind that I wanted to write for television, but I wasn't sure about how to go about it. And then a guy my age who had worked for David Letterman,
right?
And this was at the beginning of David Letterman's career. This is in the 80s. So, and that sort of opened my mind to the fact that it was a possibility. And then I started looking for jobs that might give me connections to the business, and I ended up getting a job as an assistant to a writer.
Nice.
And she was a woman named Gloria Banta, and she submitted my work that I did with a partner to the producers of the Golden Girls, and they hired me.
Nice. Yeah, and I suppose obviously you bring up the whole like connectivity aspect, and like I've seen your name a lot on Twitter. I follow a lot of like TV writers. I see your name a lot there, and I suppose like I imagine there could be people who are writers already who kind of want to break into it and not be watching this. But I suppose to kind of look at your career specifically, you've worked in a lot of animation. Obviously, Futurama, Family Guy, American Dad, to name a few. So I suppose from like the writing standpoint, like how different is breaking an episode of an animation or animated series compared to something like the Golden Girls, or you worked on Star Trek Enterprise and other kind of live action stuff.
Right. I think that the secret to any good television writing, whether it's animated or live action, is that the writer feel like that makes you feel for the characters, laughing with them, laughing at them, whatever they're undergoing. Even if it's on an animated show, you want it to feel compelling.
Yeah.
So you're always sort of starting from that case. Now each type of show has its own style, and an animated show you can really go to crazy places that you can't go in a live action show. But I maintain that even when you go to those crazy places, the audience still has to come back and feel like they're engaged with your characters. So there's, in terms of breaking a story, I think there's just a lot of similarities. It's just that the context of whatever the show is going to be different. So lots of the sitcoms I wrote for are different than the dramas that I've written for, and then even the animated shows that I've written for are different from each other. I do think there's a lot more actually happens in an animated show than a live action show.
Yeah.
Mostly because animated characters are not as interesting to look at as people.
Yeah.
So you've got to really pack it in there with stuff.
Yeah.
But still, hopefully the story is something that the audience cares about.
Absolutely. And I suppose like inherently, unless you created the show, like you're writing characters that someone else had created. And I suppose even after you've like been in the industry for like several years, has that ever become any less daunting or any less kind of jarring, kind of like finding these character voices, or do you just kind of adapt as you go along?
That's a very good question. I think that I have a confidence that I can work on a lot of different shows.
Mm,
So I'm always trying to get hired by other writers to work on their shows.
yeah.
But when it comes to writing the script, and I think this is something that hasn't changed, I want it to be good. And
Mm,
so I still have that kind of insecurity that helps drive me to work really hard on it and hopefully write a good script that the person who hired me feels is in the voice of their show. So I have a confidence based on experience,
yeah.
but I also still very much care what the person who hired me wants, and
Mm.
that's that really hasn't changed.
Absolutely. And obviously, like with the shows I've already mentioned that you've worked on, you've, been able to write for some of, I would say, some of TV's most iconic characters in animation and live action. And like, was there any kind of character in particular that you enjoyed writing for, like whether in your past or still now?
Um, well, I mean, I really enjoyed my time at Family Guy. I think
Yeah.
those were Stewie and Brian and Peter and
Mm.
Lois. So those are fun, and all the characters on the show are really fun to write for, hard to make funny. I really
Yeah.
also enjoyed my time on Futurama. I'm actually Futurama's coming back
Yeah.
this year, and
On Hulu. Yeah.
currently writing a script for that. So
Oh,
it's
nice.
fun after 20 years to go back to
Mm.
writing that show.
Mm.
Um, and I love the whole love the whole situation on Futurama, all the characters, and
Yeah.
to me, reason I had a good time at Family Guy, reason I had a good time on Futurama is the other writers I was working with. To get to work with those
Sure.
writers was always so fun.
Mm. Absolutely. And I know like more recently you've worked on the Orville, another Seth MacFarlane show and live action. And thinking about actually that and Futurama kind of have in common, obviously both set in the distant future. And there's obviously a lot of like human characters and kind of, even though it's, quite distant from where we are, everyday problems are still kind of similar. You can kind of employ those kind of, I guess, devices. But then you have characters, like Bender from Futurama, who's a robot, Isaac and Bortus in the Orville, very obviously not humans. Like, do you kind of apply any different thinking, or do you just kind of treat every character equally, regardless of, what they are? I guess that, for want of a better way of saying it.
Well, Orville is a drama, and so
Sure.
there's less comedy involved in
Mm,
the portrayal of those characters. So you want to try to find the reality a little
yeah.
more, whereas Bender the robot or Dr. Zoidberg are
Yeah, of course.
comedic characters, and
Mm,
maybe you want to care about them, but you won't have the same attention to the internal reality of the character that you do on the Orville.
fair enough. Absolutely. And I know like on a lot of the shows that we've mentioned, you've also been an EP, like executive producer. And I suppose like how does that serve your role as a writer or vice versa? Like do they kind of feed into each other at all?
Well, my role as a writer is paramount.
Yeah.
That's why I'm an executive producer, and that's more of a reflection of my seniority
Mm,
in business. My role as executive producer varies in terms of the duties I would carry out. In certain circumstances, I would be heavily involved in casting and other production. In other cases, I'm really just a senior writer with that title.
right.
Um,
Sure.
Orville, I have an old relationship with Seth. We've
Yeah.
been friends and collaborators for a long time,
Mm,
and so my job there is to help him do his job,
mm,
and that's the writing of the scripts, but also ideas for all the stories, the arc of the season, character
mm,
moments. Even he'll ask me sometimes for input on his acting.
mm.
Um, he might ask my input on casting, but I'm there really to help him do his job.
For sure. Yeah. And also you mentioned Seth MacFarlane, and I think across like Family Guy, American Dad and the Orville. It must be about 20 years you've worked together for. I mean, I don't know how long you've known each other outside of the professional context, but at least 20 years working together, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, we met when he hired me on Family Guy, and
Oh, sure. Okay.
so that was in I think 2000,
Mm,
1999 or 2000. He hired me, I think, and so that's when we met, and
yeah.
from the beginning, a very really good working relationship. I have an enormous amount of respect for him, and am in awe of his talent, and he has shown me a lot of respect, and I really enjoy working with him. I'm very, very lucky to have gotten to have that relationship.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think the Orville, when it first started out, it was very much kind of paying homage to like the classic Star Trek. And I know one of the episodes of Futurama that you wrote was Where No Fan Has Gone Before, which is a very kind of Trek heavy episode. And I believe you're quite openly like a big Star Trek fan, right? So was that like a pinch me moment for you back when you were writing that episode? Because obviously all the voices that came and everything like that.
Yeah, that was a very exciting experience. I got hired on Futurama, and at that moment in time, they were talking about doing a full-on Star Trek homage.
Mm,
And in a couple of weeks of being there, David Cohen, the head writer,
yeah.
said he wanted me to write the script because it was clear that I was the biggest Star Trek fan on the
Mm,
staff. So that was very exciting, and I filled that script with, it's chock-a-block with Star Trek references from the original series, and getting to record. We recorded William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy together, and all the other
wow.
actors came in, and very, very fun, very exciting.
Mm,
And the show was nominated for a Nebula Award, which is a science fiction award, and
mm.
lost to the Fellowship of the Ring, I think, or to one of the
Oh, right. Okay.
crazy that episode was nominated in the same category
Yeah, it's
as
insane.
Lord of the Rings. But so that was obviously a very exciting time for me.
Mm, absolutely. And I know across like Star Trek Enterprise and the Orville, you've worked with Brannon Braga. Hope I'm saying that right. But
Yes.
I found an interview that he did at the start of the Orville, and I don't know if you ever saw it, or you might have actually been there with him. You might have been interviewed together, but he said that you were like the perfect writer for the Orville. I guess based on what you've just been kind of saying, like being a fan of Star Trek and like you just your wider knowledge. And I suppose like how fulfilling has that experience been then? Obviously being a fan of this genre and getting to use your years of expertise as a writer and kind of combine those two things.
Yeah, that was a really great experience to get to work on that show with Seth. I mean, Seth and I were both such big Star Trek fans.
Mm,
My first years on Family Guy, before I'd worked on Star Trek, Seth would do quotes from Star Trek, and I had to identify
mm,
the episode. On the set of the Orville, this would sort of boggle everyone's minds. He would play a music cue from Star Trek, and I would have to identify the episode. So that
yeah.
was we're both very big Star Trek fans, but we so to get to create our own universe and be part of
Mm,
that creation that is both similar to Star Trek but also different, and has been just wild. Just a
mm.
very, very fortunate to have that experience.
Absolutely. And I suppose kind of going back a bit to what we were saying about like writing other people's characters. I know you in season one of the Orville, you wrote that Krill episode where they went undercover on the ship. And I think that was at least the first one that came out that wasn't written by Seth Macfarlane. I don't know like what order you shot it in, but then like I suppose then was that kind of just a sign of the trust he had in you to kind of take on, well, I think was a very important episode in the series, to kind of setting up the Krill as this major species. And like I suppose that how was the experience of kind of establishing the Krill that early on.
Well, we had Seth and I had talked a lot about the Krill before,
Mm,
even before this series was picked up. He and I
yeah.
had the idea of this religiously reactionary spacefaring race,
Mm.
and we'd already sort of come up with that idea together
Yeah.
previously. And then in the breaking of the story for the season, Seth can't just doesn't have time to write everything, although
Mm.
his hand is in everything. So even
Yeah.
though I wrote that script, I worked out the story with him and the other writers.
Mm.
He wrote the script, so the final script he didn't rewrite it completely. It's still mostly my script, but
Yeah.
he's still very much involved. But he doesn't feel the need to put his name on every script, even though he rewrites every script.
Sure.
So it wasn't, he's a true collaborator that way. And but I was very excited to get to. I mean, it was my idea to say, let's do a Krill episode. Let's introduce these people in
Mm.
depth, and figuring out that story was, and getting to write that script. Very proud of that episode. I think it came out great.
Absolutely. And obviously, without kind of stating the obvious, Seth MacFarlane also playing Ed Mercer. And I've actually spoken to a couple of the actors from the show, like one of them being Peter Macon, who plays Bortus. So I suppose that looking the other way, I mean, do they kind of offer any input into their characters? Kind of, I mean, is that kind of a symbiotic thing, or is it just kind of like, we write, then you act, and that's kind of,
Well, it's a subtle interaction in the sense that we write to their strengths. We write
sure,
things that they do, like Bortus and Clyden and that relationship, and then the
mm,
whole relationship with Topa.
yeah,
We leaned into that in the show because of those actors. Like, if
yeah,
those actors hadn't done such an amazing job
mm,
creating characters and making us want to do more. And
yeah,
then Claire and Isaac, we were really liking in season one, that episode where Claire and Isaac crash on the planet.
yeah, they were stranded, weren't they? Yeah,
And we just loved that chemistry of Isaac with Claire and Isaac with
mm,
their sons, and we leaned into that too.
yeah,
So I think that, and then the rest of the actors, Adrienne is such a talented actress. Scott
mm,
Grimes, such a talented actor.
yeah,
We lean in where we, again, in the case of those two, we can give them anything and
mm,
they'll be great. So and that's, I think, true of the cast across the board. So there's definitely an interaction where we're saying, what can we do with Jessica this week?
yeah,
Great actress, and we introduced the character of Ann Winter's character this year, Charlie.
mm,
That Charlie's character was based on something we wanted to do, but
yeah,
then the stuff that we do with Anne and her interactions with Isaac has a lot to do with her talent as an actress. So
yeah,
and again, I left out Jay Lee.
mm,
We moved Jay to engineering because
mm,
we wanted to give him more to do too by himself, that he wasn't
yeah,
just with Gordon. So
sure.
that all those, I don't think I've left anybody out there. We're very fortunate. That cast is really, really talented.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just to kind of pick up a couple of things that you said there, because I also spoke to Imani, who plays Topa, and I think she's just an excellent find for you guys. Like, she killed it in that, first episode she was in, Taylor Two Topas. I thought, and I know I was able to tell her personally, I thought she was phenomenal. She was excellent in that episode. That was insane.
She's a remarkable actress. I'm
Mm,
so blown away by that performance and the subtlety of it. And without spoiling it, if anybody hasn't seen it,
yeah.
what she does in that show is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, and it's even kind of, I think, better when you like appreciate that, because either her or Peter mentioned to me that she's the third person to play Topa, like overall, like, and that's crazy. I mean, she's completely inhabited the role. You would never have even thought, hang on, this is like Topa number three. She just knocked out the park. It was incredible.
Incredible.
Hmm. Yeah, and obviously you mentioned like Ann Winters as well, and like is bringing in a new regular in the third season. That's kind of, I mean, on paper that sounds like a bit of a risk. So like, what kind of, I guess, measures, for want of a better word, did you kind of take with Charlie to try and like incorporate her into the show without it kind of feeling too kind of like on the nose? Okay, this is the new person, and that's what we're doing.
Well, I mean, she came out, the character came out of a desire to address that the that there would be people in the union who would not want Isaac part of the crew. And
Yeah.
so we create that character in the room, and then we, audition actresses. Seth auditions actresses for the role. I think he knew of Anne's work from other things.
Yeah.
And she's just she inhabits the role. So it's more about the evolving of the show. Like, we had this big war in season 2, and there are ramifications from it. So the show evolved, and that allows you to add characters because the show's evolving.
Sure. Absolutely. I suppose, like, kind of moving away a bit from like your active like writing career, like I know you were also like and you might correct me if I get this wrong, but you were the president of the Writers Guild of America West. Is that right? Yeah, or at least you were until very recently. And I suppose, like, I mean, for anyone who has no idea what I just said, you maybe kind of explain what that role entailed and what it involved.
Well, we have a union. We writers have a union, and that union's job is to protect writer salaries, to make sure that writers are paid a minimum, that that they share in the profit of their work, that if something a writer writes is successful, that a studio can't keep money, all the money to themselves, that they have to share it with that writer, that a writer gets credit, that a studio doesn't decide who gets credit, that's the writers who wrote the script get their credit. These are all things that our union does, and that it provides a health plan for writers. It provides a pension for writers, so that writers get a health benefits and pension, and that so that you can maintain your career as a writer. So that there's always going to be ups and downs in a creative career, and what the union does is it helps. It helps. I'm just putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. It helps writers stay in their career and ride those ups and downs. And so, as president, it was my job to help the union stay vital, stay connected to its members, but also letting the companies that hire us know, fight for writer salaries in a period of enormous change as everything goes to streaming and the like.
Yeah, and I suppose, kind of like, as you were saying, there'd only be someone who's got quite a bit of experience who I guess would be, qualified to take on a role like that. You wouldn't just, right out of the gate be thinking, oh, you know what, I want to try and be the president of the Writers Guild. You just kind of have to, I mean, even to have that a knowledge of how being a working writer in that industry works. You kind of need that, don't you?
I think so. I mean, I think that certainly helped me. I also was involved with the union for 15 years before, as a member of the board of directors for 15 years before president. But yes, I think, but also being empathetic to writers, because I've had my career, but my career is different than a lot of other writers' careers, and understanding that there are things that other writers have gone through that I haven't had to go through, but that the union should still be helping.
Absolutely. And I know, obviously, like, the Orville season 3 is streaming right now as when we're recording this. It's still ongoing. I know also coming up, you've got the film Honor Society, which I've seen like quite a bit about. I suppose for anyone who hasn't heard much about it, like, how would you kind of set it up or describe it?
Well, thank you for bringing it up. Starting tomorrow in America, anyway, it's starting to stream on Paramount Plus. I don't know when Paramount Plus is coming to the UK, but
I think we just got it. But yeah, sorry, go on. Yeah.
So it's a bit of a departure, I think, from a lot of the work that I've done. It's a movie. It takes place in high school. It's a young woman, Honor Rose is her name, is determined to get out of her small town, go off to college, and go to Harvard. She's fighting for the recommendation from this guidance counselor, and she finds out she has 3 people she's competing with, and going to take them down so that she can get this recommendation. But things take a turn for her that she doesn't expect, and I'm very proud of the movie. stars an actress named Gallery Rice, who recently
Ah,
was in Mayor of Easttown, which was
yeah,
on HBO Max, and very talented actress, Australian.
yeah. No, I'm familiar with her. Yeah, yeah.
Gaten Matarazzo, who's one of the kids from Stranger
Mm,
Things, very
absolutely.
talented, and an actor, Chris Mintz-Plasse, who played McLovin in Superbad,
Yeah.
and the directed by very talented. It's her first feature film. Oran Zegman just did an amazing job. So I think it's a great film. I think people will really enjoy it.
Yeah, and like to your point, because obviously there's that whole thing of like when something you can't remember whether you knew something or like when you learned something. And I'm trying to remember if I knew that you were the writer of that before I was like researching, because as you say, it's not typically like if you stack it up against the other things you've done, it doesn't necessarily align. Because even like something like the Orville and Enterprise, you can kind of say, okay, those two are kind of similar. But I mean, I think personally that's great as a writer to kind of explore different things. So like was that something that was like something
Well,
that factored into your mind when you're writing it? Yeah.
I think that's a difference in how movies are sold versus television.
Mm,
Television is really a writer's medium, even though movies is too.
yeah.
The way movies are sold, it's much more sold with who's in it or who the director is, and so I think that there's some way in which is fine with me as long as people see the movie.
Sure.
But I think that's also might be a reflection of that. But also, I have done many other things. I've done a lot of stuff that
Oh,
we
of
haven't
course.
talked about, and I've
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
wanted. That's always what I wanted. I never wanted to do just one thing. I've been very fortunate in my career that I've gotten to do lots and lots of different kinds of writing, which
Yeah.
I find very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it from like actors as well, and I suppose it's the same kind of principle. You kind of got into this career not to do just one thing. You kind of want to explore different, all sorts of territories, and I suppose that's what makes it exciting. Going into work every day, and okay, this is completely different to what I was doing a year or two ago, and it kind of keeps it fresh, right?
Yeah, and you're creative people, everybody has creative instincts and creative things they want to do, and I think it's important to um, keep yourself, reinvent yourself, and try new things. There's always going to make you can always go back and do the thing you've done before,
Mm,
uh, but if you try new things, you may open up a door into a type of creativity you didn't expect, and that certainly happened with me with Honor Society.
absolutely. And it's actually the last question I've got prepared, and people kind of ask when I ask it, like, whether okay, I'll just kind of come up with the question, I guess. But in a wider sense, what do you hope to accomplish with the rest of 2022? And I guess whether you want to take that as being professionally or personally, just kind of whoever if you want to answer that, just just for the rest of the year, what would you like to do?
The next 5 months. You're only just 5 months.
Oh okay, well, I mean, if we go from July to July, then or but yeah.
So uh, I'm pursuing a lot of things. I'm trying to developing a bunch of television shows. I don't know that they'll sell. I
Mm,
hope any of them sell. I'm very excited about all of them. I also am doing a lot of other kinds of writing uh,
yeah.
that's different. For me, you know, I always I hope uh, I hope they're going to keep paying me. I guess is what I would always say is that I have all these ideas and all these things that I like to do. I'm very
Mm,
fortunate that I get paid as a writer, and I
yeah.
hope it continues.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously, just thanks again, David, for taking the time to chat with me today, and all the best with Honor Society and your future projects, and just all the best. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Connie. You too.